Welcome back to the Growing Money with Sean Trace podcast. It is me, Sean Trace, and I've got the awesome Professor Heath with me today. Now, we've got something fun for you guys. How was your week, Professor Heath? Did you have anything fun pop up?
Dude, I'm not even making this up. Our conversation stuck with me all week. And like your story was a topic of conversation in a lot of my classes during the week, this just after the podcast aired. So honestly, like your story and just this whole podcast has been something that all last week I was totally looking forward to today. So yeah, that was my week. In
That's
addition
awesome.
to Easter, all the other stuff. So
Yeah.
how about you?
I had something that actually is relevant to this, and I want to share it because it was interesting. It happened today. So we're coming up on the end of the school year for my daughter, which is they do their end of the year exams here like end of April, May. And I'm just like, well, why? And then the kids just mess around all the way through the first week of June with absolutely nothing. The kids just, you take them to school and they just totally goof off. And I was like, makes no sense to me. I was like, I don't get it, but it's the system here. But one of the things that was a problem for me was that we were getting ready to go, and I'm not just complaining. There is a point to the story. So we got to the, a private tutor that's been coming in and teaching my daughter. She's one of the teachers at the school that my daughter studies at. And first and foremost, she's completely the worst on punctuality, and she's always rescheduling, always like I am so like, if I say 5:15, I'm on, like we start at 5:15, and it's like, that's always been the way I am. But this lady, she's like 5:30, she's 6:30, 7 the other day. She rolled in one day. She was like, and I had this thing that I was doing with my daughter that was really important. We were interviewing this like this top astrophysicist, for our Ilani's little world. And that was like at 8, and the teacher rolls up at 7:45. And then we're also having to do the review for all of the classes and stuff. And it was just like chaos. And then she hands me this packet for review for my daughter. It was 45 pages of math. And then like my daughter's 8, man, 45 pages of math. It was, man, what else? There was some other stuff in there, like some Vietnamese stuff, some English stuff. And then these 3 little sheets of paper that had like what looked like a poems written on them. And I was just like, all right. So what did I do? I booked an extra tutor, this girl that I know that does math tutoring, for 3 sessions over the weekend, and we cranked out that math homework, right? And then the tutor showed up today and totally threw me under the bus. She's like, that one document, that one paper that had the 3 little poems on it, that was the important one. And I was just like, dude, like, come on, man. 45 pages of math homework that we got done, and I'm getting thrown under the bus for the one. Why I bring it up is because one of the biggest challenges that I run into living here and having my daughter study in a different country is I don't know how to navigate the system. And there's a lot of information. We get all these parent groups, all these posts going up, and then they have this one LMS portal, like a learner management system that no one uses. Some of the teachers just are like, we're going to share things here because we need it to look good, but they don't do it. Then they do it all through some group chat, but then they have a second group chat for the parents, and then a third group chat. And I'm just like, I'm so overwhelmed. And it got me as I'm sitting there absolutely overwhelmed, I was reading this story on the news, and they were talking about the finfluencers, the financial influencers that right now are really, really, really laying it on thick with information as we are in some market turmoil. And this article was from I can't remember what magazine or newspaper it was, but it was a reputable source. And they were like, the problem is that some of this advice is good, some of it's not, and so one of the things that when we were talking about this money school, like a special here on the podcast, we were talking about trying to sort out like like almost like a financial GPS for people, and you'd started talking about your book and how you guide people, because right now there's videos, there's podcasts, there's TikTok, but there's no roadmap. If my daughter's teacher had sat there and said, Sean, math is important, but these two little pages right here, this is where it's at. These poems have to be memorized by heart for her to write them for her Vietnamese exam. That's her Vietnamese exam. I would have been like, wow, that's important. I'm so glad you told me that in triplicate, in writing, in speech, and in another group chat so that my wife can also see it, and my mother-in-law, who also helped me with my daughter, because they sure need to know that too. But instead, it was like in passing, she hands me these documents and we're out the door. And I had no roadmap. And so,
Yeah.
I was sat there and 45 pages of math homework done, 3 extra tutoring sessions. That was no small feat, but it wasn't the effort that was the most important. And we're talking a little bit about why we're doing this. And I wanted to bounce it back to you to hear some of your reasons that you think what we're putting together here is important.
So anyway, I was going to say two things. One, as it relates to you and your daughter, studies have shown that like parent involvement is probably the number one biggest attribute to student success.
Ah,
So like you could end up navigating the whole system totally incorrectly, but as long as you continue to stay engaged with your kid, like that's going to contribute the most to her success. So cut
thank
yourself some
goodness.
slack about navigating the stuff right. And then two, what you just said is so fucking on point. Like, so I often go online and look to see what other people who talk about finance talk about. And I myself get totally overwhelmed by the amount of information that's available to people. And so it's kind of like trying to solve a Rubik's cube, right? So like there's so many different sides to the square. There's like there's the perspective of the host, and then there's the demographic of the listener. And then there's all of the information that needs to be covered. And there's so many moving parts that it's really, really hard to try to parse out what's important versus
Yeah.
what's just kind of like the noise. And so like that same confusion exists in my class. And so like when I go to class, I really like pushing out the most important stuff like in the first 5 to 10 minutes, and then build, because that's usually where 80% of what you have to learn is usually covered in like 20% of the time. And so like I really like to put forward the most important stuff, and then you just sort of build around it so students really understand what is the important takeaways. And so what I really like about this conversation today is the fact that like I really think it's super important to circle the wagons around all of the important stuff, right? Let's just like bullet point, 5 or 6, 7 things that are the most important things when it comes to, your financial well-being. And then let's just kind of like tie a bow around it so we understand
Right.
like what it is we really need to get from all of this other information. And then from there, you could sort of use it as a roadmap,
Yep.
right? It's like a table of contents. And
Yes.
I don't read. I've read like 3 books my entire life, but I go to the fucking library all the time. And I look at these books and I'm like, oh my God, this book is awesome. Like I read the table of contents and I'm like, I'm taking this book home, and I'll like get home and I'll start reading it. And it's just like a few pages in, I'm like, I can't finish this. But the table of contents is what I always get super excited about. So like I was really excited about this conversation because I feel like it's the table of contents of what we hope to or what I hope or what we hope to cover over the next, I don't know, year maybe.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things too that I think, and there was I thought a lot. I didn't respond to any of the comments yet about our last episode because I've been circling back on how to respond. And I want to kind of do a blanket response here. because I was thinking about it. One of the things that I'm actually really happy that I shared what I shared, about the stress and the reasons for starting this podcast and, some of the challenges I've had. But one of the things that I realized, and I didn't emphasize in that, and I want to emphasize here, is that this information, learning, getting this knowledge is power. And, and it's like, and it gives you, and if you do the game, you play the game right, it brings you freedom. And I mean, that's what most people want, that power to steer their own finances and to change their direction, and then the freedom to get out of whatever you're in, because
Yeah.
I sat there and I was really excited about that and sharing, and these younger people were messaging in the comments going, you know what, I'm so glad to hear this, I'm so glad to hear these different perspectives, because you know for Gen Z especially, and Gen Alpha for my daughter's generation, starting to teach them about personal finance is so important. And you sent me over an awesome outline about some of the reasons that this is important for Gen Z. Can you talk to me a little bit about why personal finance matters for Gen Z?
So to me, it's twofold, right? So like the context is super important. There's just like so much noise, and it's so hard to digest. And so like if you were to just like pinpoint the most important things, you're really like you're establishing good habits before you make a bunch of bad mistakes.
Yes.
And like if there's one comment that I hear most from people, it's that they wish that they were exposed to this information earlier in life. And so that's twofold, really. The first one is, had I known about the power of compound interest, so like just backing
Right.
up, your superpower. So like if you're young, your superpower is time, right? So
Yes.
the more time that you have to grow your wealth, the more flexibility you have in the way you do that. You can take risk, you cannot take risk, but you just have a ton of opportunity. And so time really is important when you're growing wealth. And so a lot of people will say, man, I really wish I would have been exposed to this at a much younger age because I would have had more time. And then on the flip side, a lot of people will say, boy, I really wish I was exposed to this information so I didn't make all those fucking mistakes that I've made, like like get tons of student loans debt or rack up some credit card expenses that I'm still paying for to this day. Or I wish I had learned how to budget so that my money wasn't spent or wasted on frivolous things. So the benefits of being exposed or at least understanding some of the basic tenets of personal finance, really, I agree with you. It really empowers people. And so it's to me, it's like just stepping out on the right footing from square one is
Yep.
such a huge opportunity for most people.
And one of the things that popped up, you really are like the boss of your own money. Like you are the person who's the CEO of your financial life, and you got to learn how to manage it, man. Because, you know,
Yeah, you're the CEO of your brand, right? So your
right.
brand is so it's a lot of things. It's like the health of your brand, the
Yep.
financial prowess of your brand. So like you are managing your brand, and the finances of your brand are just as important as all the other things. It's a huge to me it's a huge super positive thing, but it's just again really hard to get somebody who's 18 really fired up about it,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's not taught in schools, but like it's really essential for the whole adulting thing. Like it's not taught, except for your classes. But people get there and they're just like, or they get out of school. I was studying in acupuncture school, and I actually really loved it. I loved learning about this stuff, but all my friends were finishing up and they were like, I don't know how to run a practice. I don't know how to do the business side. They were great practitioners. And like the stuff about being in business, about managing money is not taught in any of these schools.
It's not. And you'd be surprised. um, I, I when I first started teaching at CSM, um, there was no personal finance class in our division, and we were trying to find ways to increase, you know, student population in our division, and we were like, man, we should offer a personal finance class, and so it was a struggle. It was a real struggle just creating the class on my campus within the accounting department. And so, like, I had a hard time doing it. Like, there was a lot of, we don't need to get in the weeds, but there was a lot of disputes about whether it belongs in the accounting department or the business department.
Yeah.
But what I ended up realizing throughout the process was like, it's not really a class that fits into ethnic studies or history or biology
Right.
or computer science. It's not a requirement. Like, so if you're managing the biology department, you're like, well, why would I offer a personal finance class? This isn't anything related to my topic area. So like, it doesn't fit into my major. So I'm not going to
Right.
offer it. So it's like, it's the one class that sort of slips through the cracks. And
Right.
like, the kids who are signing up for the course are the ones that would be signing up for the course or looking for this information no matter what.
Yeah.
Right. But it really needs to be
It should be
something that,
everyone.
yeah, it should, like, it's like, okay, I agree. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody's major, but it's the one fucking thing that applies to everybody.
Think
And
about
it's
that.
like, why? And so, like, it's not malicious that it's
Mm-mm.
not offered. It's just that it doesn't really fit in to like a traditional curriculum in a lot of departments. And so, like, it's just one of those things that kind of slips through the cracks. And it's so unfortunate for young adults because I'm telling you, it is not really that difficult. Like,
No,
what makes it difficult is just this overwhelming amount of information.
that's it.
And when you really, like, when you really stop and talk about like what are the main things that you really should be doing, it's so fucking simple, right?
Yeah.
It's really not about uncovering some secret. It's
No,
about finding the discipline within yourself to like reach for more rewarding goals. And so it's like, I can go, sorry for
dude,
continuing.
you're fine. Don't need to apologize.
So it's like, look, I get that there's a lot of like, so if I just like for a second relate to food, I relate everything to food.
Well, that's a
And
good
so
thing to
for
relate it
me,
to, brother.
like, dude, I love pizza. I love hamburgers. I love
Right?
French fries. I love soda. I love it all, right? There isn't any food that I don't love. Okay. But the thing is that I can't just like consume food the food that I love my entire life, right? Because I gain weight. I can get diabetes. I could be at risk for heart disease. And so like, I have to be a little bit more conscious about what I'm eating in order to like be healthy. And so
Yeah.
like managing your money is the same thing. Like, you can have money in your wallet or you can have a credit card or debit card and you can go out and you can spend your money and it feels awesome. But there are bigger dreams and goals and aspirations than just like living in the moment and spending your money on things that make you happy today. Like, there's more than that. There's
Yeah.
more to it.
And you know, it really does. When you can do this right, it gives you freedom. You know, the freedom to travel, to start a business, or just live life on your terms, man. Like it really gives you that freedom. And when you don't, like, you know, I was thinking back, my wife and I hadn't been able to travel much the past couple years because I had to work and I couldn't get days off, you know, and it was just like, and I couldn't, if I got those days off, then it would hurt on the paycheck side, you know?
Yeah.
And when you plan ahead, when you're doing things right, you have that freedom to do stuff, you know what I mean? And like, and you know, that freedom could be lots of different things. Maybe there was this great clip where this, oh geez, what movie was it? It was like some mobster, and it was the guy from Big Lebowski. the chubbier guy, and he's talking to Mark Wahlberg about like life, and he's like, you know what you need to do? You need to get this much money, you set aside, and then he's like, because that money lets you say "f you" to whoever, to whatever.
Yeah.
You don't have a job you
Yeah.
like? Screw you, man. You don't like this? Screw you. And it's just like, you can tell these people that. But, it's like, think about that. You see someone, your boss comes in and just says something that makes you like, and then, but you need that job. You can't say anything. And like,
Yeah.
but if you've done this right, you have the ability to go, hey, see ya,
Yeah.
and like, it gives you that freedom.
There's that's a hard perspective when you're young, right? Because you don't have too many responsibilities. So when you're 20, 22, 23, and your boss comes in and tells you to do something and you're not interested, you're like, yeah, fuck you, I'm not doing that.
Right.
And you quit, right? But when you're 45,
Yeah.
and you have a family, and you have a mortgage or a rent, like, man, it is fucking hard to tell somebody to fuck off in that context. And so, like, you have to have a little foresight in that, like, life gets really complicated really fast before you know it. And you just want to, like, establish some good habits. And look, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be spending your money on things that you want to spend your money on. But, like, if you start young, you don't have to spend much of your money on the important things to set you up into the future, right? So it's just about being a little bit smarter about the way that you're spending your money, and taking small portions of it and allocating it to things that are going to be important to you, maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15, 20, 30 years from now. And, like, the kids that have the foresight to see the future that way are the kids that, like, somehow have the discipline to start setting aside the money. And it's just like, how do because, like, my son, he's 19, and he's got a job and he's making a good amount of money. He works here on campus, and I'm like, dude, you got to, like, start putting your money to a Roth IRA. And he's like, what is a Roth? Like, why do I want to do that? What is it? And I try to explain all the conversation we're having right now. I try to have with my son, and he's just like, yeah, dude, this is fucking wasted. He's just like, all right, I'll do it because you're telling me to do it. But he has no I mean, he's probably got some, but it's like, it's such a non-priority to him. And the fact is that, like, the amount of money that he's putting away, man, he is going to be living an amazing life when he's older, and he doesn't even realize it at the moment.
Right.
And so it's like, what is it? How do you inspire somebody to do those things? I don't know, but I at least, when we were thinking about what we wanted to cover in this episode, I was at least thinking, let's just try to, like, narrow the focus, and let's just, like, identify the main tenets that we want to be conscious of, and let's just try to, like, nail down and put forward something that is, like, it's not so overwhelming. And it's just like, man, is that really it? That's really, like, is that really all that I need to be worried about? Because it's again, like, it's not complicated. The complicated part is just doing it at a young age.
And right. And it's like, and this is the cool part, is that, you sent me over something, and it was only our roadmap that you presented is only about 9 steps long. There's only about 9 things. And, like, we're going to be hammering away. Now, what is number 1, brother?
Okay, so let's back up. So I agree that there are 9 things, right? But even then, within the 9 things, there's only, like, 2 or 3 things that are, like, most important. Like, we're going to talk about buying a house, or talk about estate planning. But, dude, that isn't the important stuff for somebody who's just getting started. So the first thing in the list that I sent you, as god awful as it sounds, is budgeting, right? And so, like a lot of people have some resistance to budgeting, but the fact is that everybody budgets.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I don't care who you are, you budget, right? You know how much you make and you know how much you spend. Okay. There's a handful of individuals, there's more than a handful. There's a lot of people who spend a little bit more than they make and they run up credit card debt. But like, that if you're working at McDonald's, you're not taking private jets to Ibiza, right? So like, you're fucking budgeting. You're already budgeting. You already understand your limitations. And so like what I'm talking about when I'm talking about budgeting is just like, just pay attention to a few things. There's all sorts of information about budgeting, right? You can be super detailed and you can totally get into the weeds of budgeting. But then if you don't really want to do that, there are ways to budget that are much more flexible,
Yeah.
less time consuming, much easier to implement. And again, the goal of budgeting is really identifying like incremental areas where you can set aside some of your money for those longer, like midterm, long term goals, right? So, like, to me, that's like, it's a starting point. As dry as it is and as dry as those conversations are, like, I personally think that we all need to like be somewhat conscious of how we spend our money.
One of the things that I'm going to come full circle now to something that you said
Okay.
earlier. I always love like comparing, because I studied medicine, albeit alternative medicine. I studied medicine, and then like I tend to come back to food and wellness and exercise and things like that.
Nice.
And with a budget teen reminds me of all of the diets out there, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna go the low carb. I'm gonna go the high carb. I'm gonna go the paleo. Well, I'm vegan, and it's like whatever else is out there, and in
Yeah.
between the blue zone diet, the Mediterranean diet, and everyone will come to you and tell you that their diet is the right diet, that their
Yeah.
diet is the way, and you go and watch Joe Rogan, and the man eats red meat like 5 times a day, like in large portions, and then no, and I mean, and maybe it's the right thing, but then you go and you see someone else, and they're like, if you want heart health, you do all plant based. But the reality is that it might be that there's different ways to do it for different people. And the second thing that I would also point out is, at the end of the day, it's simply being aware of, what the fuck am I eating? You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and like, all right, what are my goals? Well, I want to look like, I want to look like a professional model or a male model or a UFC fighter, whatever it might be. And like, all right, well, what are you going to eat? Well, I'm going to eat 5 steaks right now, might not be the right thing. Or, like, well, you know what? On the way in here, I saw a pastry shop. I ordered
Dude, I'm
45 of
loving
them.
this conversation. I'm like loving this conversation because, like, you're right. Like, budgeting is the wrong word to use. Like, we just really want to be conscious of like what we're spending our money on.
Right?
And going back to food and diets, like, I was talking to a nutrition. So I went to the doctor and they were like, dude, you got to get your shit together. You're pre-diabetic and you're at risk for heart disease. You got to get your shit together. And I'm like, okay. They're like, you need to talk to a nutritionist. And I was like, man, there's no fucking way that that's going to help me. Like, cause I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Right. So I get on the call and the guy's like, okay, why don't you tell me what a typical breakfast, lunch, and dinner looks like? And so I started going through it. And well, like, I prefaced the conversation was like, dude, I've tried everything. I can't lose weight. It's just not working for me. And so he asked, what are you eating? And I started going through it. He's like, what do you eat for breakfast? I was like, well, I don't eat breakfast, because I'm trying to lose weight. And then he's like, okay, what do you eat for lunch? And he's like, well, I can't really get to lunch because I'm super hungry. So I'll have a cookie from the cafeteria, big chocolate chip cookie. He's like, okay, what do you have for lunch? I don't eat lunch because I'm on a diet. Okay, what do you eat for dinner? I come home fucking starving. So I devour chips until my wife comes home and we start cooking dinner. And then I'll have this massive dinner because it's like the best food and I'm super hungry. And it was like talking about it to this guy. I was like, holy shit. Like it's so obvious to me now why I'm not able to lose weight. It sounds so absurd what I'm eating, but like I don't pay attention to it. And that's all we're talking about when it comes
That's
to
it.
money is like you just we budgeting is just like an opportunity for you to pay attention to what you're spending your money on.
Yeah.
And everybody who goes through that process always walks away from the experience thinking, man, I had no idea I was spending that much money on food or going out. So
Right.
anyway, like
Well,
budgeting is definitely the however you want to articulate paying attention to what we're spending our money on is like the first thing we want to really cover.
yeah, I love that. And then the second thing is something that always confused me. And it's something that I think is really important for college students because you told me now it is now illegal for people to go and start trying to get people to sign up for credit cards at universities. But when I was in college, they had all these different banks lined up going, "Hey, buddy, do you want $2,000? We got $2,000 for you right here." And I was like, "I got 2 grand. All right, man." And
Yeah.
then boom.
Yeah. So it's like there's two so credit is the second big topic that I think we need to cover. So
Yeah.
so spending and then credit. And there's really two aspects to credit that I wouldn't say excite me, but are really important to understand. The first one is like what our credit score is, right?
Yeah.
So our credit score, it's like the grade that we're getting associated with our ability to make payments or pay people back. And the better your score, the less expensive borrowing money is. So like your credit score is super important because the better your credit score, the less expensive things are for you.
Yeah.
And then two, there's credit cards, which is something completely different.
Right.
And again, credit cards, there are a lot of benefits associated with credit cards, but there are also a lot of risks associated with them as well. So we need to understand like how do we use credit cards? How do we treat the minimum payment or what's interest? And there's aspects to credit cards that it always surprises me that students aren't uh, they're surprised by what a credit card is. And I always tend to forget, like, yeah, I guess if you never had one and you never used it and you never got into trouble with it, then it's hard to appreciate, what it is specifically. But credit and managing that is the second real big component, I personally think, to managing your financial wellness the right way.
One of the things that I think that credit cards really are misunderstood too. Like, and I know, and I'm being really careful here because like I'm not an expert on this topic, but I do know children and I understand the mind of young people and most people. So let's imagine that I am in a classroom and I've got 12 kids in there and I've got a bag of cookies and I leave those cookies out on my table. Those cookies are done. It's like, I don't care. Those kids are going to come in and be like, "Oh, teacher Sean's got cookies. He's not going to notice if one of them's gone and then one cookie's gone." And the other kids are like, "Oh, you just took one of teacher Sean's cookies. The pack's gone." They have a hard time with, people often have a hard time with, understanding like, hey, well, now those cookies are gone. Well, hey guys, those are my cookies. You all owe me cookies right now. And until you pay me back those cookies, you're going to have to pay me an extra cookie every day, like, oh my goodness, we're going to have to pay you an extra cookie. And, and I think one of the things that I wish that we could start reframing this because there is power in having good credit. There's power in, there's some of the points. And this is the thing that I don't understand. And I'm glad we're diving into because, like point systems with credit cards, there's things like this. There's a lot of things in there that I think that just, if you use these right, they're powerful tools. But if you use them wrong, they will haunt you for years.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, dude, so my daughter goes to school in Chicago and she flies home maybe 3, 4 times a year. And I have never paid for an airline ticket for her to come home, nor to send her back when she drives me nuts. Right. So, and that's all because I use a credit card. I get points from using my credit card, and I use those points to buy airline tickets. And then on the flip side, I never pay interest. I pay zero interest. I never pay a credit card a dime. Right. And so it's just about using it the right way. And again, when we get into that conversation, it's going to be shocking to a lot of people how fucking easy it is to just like use it the right way and not get in trouble. There's no secret to it.
Right.
And it's exactly what you just articulated. It's just like, look, anytime you use your credit card, you have to pay that back. It's not your money. You're using somebody else's money.
So true. We move on in this journey.
Yes.
We get past that.
I could spend the next hour talking about credit cards.
Right.
But anyway, you're right. We should move on.
We move on to the next level, being investing. Now, talk to me. What is investing? And why do we even need to talk about it?
So investing. So being conscious of your spending, and that is never going to get you anywhere, right? So like, okay, fine. I'm saving money, right? So if you save money, if the income that's coming in is more than what's going out, and you were to put that under your mattress, right? That's going to actually do you a lot of harm. Yeah. You're better off just spending your money, okay? Because over time, things just get more and more expensive. Like inflation's a huge topic right now. And so your cash sitting under your mattress becomes less valuable just by sitting by itself. And so what we need to do is we need to do two things. We first need to understand that like just working, we're never going to get ahead by just working. Nobody's ever going to become super wealthy by working a 9-to-5 job. So like that's never going to happen. And then the second thing is that the cash that you do have that's sitting in your mattress, you need to have that begin working for you, right? So you want to put it into something that's going to grow in value. And that's all we're saying investing is. And there's all sorts of different types of investing, right? So a lot of the personal finance podcasts and videos and information are all about, hey, you got to invest in this if you want to be rich, or this is a great opportunity.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it is so overwhelming. And we can spend years talking about all the different things. But if you really whittle it down, if you are young and you are just getting started, it is actually very easy. Okay. It's like with one swoop, you can do exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And then you can go out and you can consume as much information as you want about investing, and you can learn the next 20%, right? Yeah. And so it's just a matter of, hey, let's just talk about investing in the context of somebody young who's just getting started, who doesn't have major credit card debt. And let's just talk about the simple ways to get started. What is it? What would you invest in? What is risk? How long do you want to invest? Like, what's the goal? How do you approach identifying things to invest in? And again, that is like, if there's anything that you want to be doing to establish or grow your wealth, it's controlling your spending, don't get into credit card debt, and then invest the right way. And it has to be super simple, and it has to take a long time. That's it. Like, you're done. I swear to God, there's more to our outline, but those are the most important things for now if you're young.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because 3 and 4 are connected. 3 is investing, but then part 4 is investing in education. And I love this one because this is something that I wish someone had to talk to me about, because it's not just about picking a major. It's about networking. It's about job fairs. It's about mentoring. It's about finding the people who can make your college actually valuable, Yeah.
Dude, totally. So like, if there's one thing that I'm super passionate about, it's about investing in your education, right? So again, if you are like, you're young, you have so many superpowers when it comes to growing wealth. It's not even funny. And what happens to a lot of people is they lock themselves into this misery path, right? And so like you have like the world at your fingertips when you're in college, and it's, if you just like do it the right way, you can unlock so much wealth,
Right.
right? Like I was so lucky in the way that I went to college, right? I was a high school dropout. So I went to community college trying to get my shit together. And what happened was I did like my first 2 years of college. I mean, it took me more than 2 years, but I didn't spend any money.
Yeah.
And then I went to a public school that happened to be like a, a really profound school in my neighborhood. And I was able to get a great job and spent very little on my education. And it's like, dude, totally stumbled through that without realizing just how powerful of an experience it was for me. And so, like, if there's one thing that I spend most of my time talking about, it's investing in your education. I cannot wait for that, those podcasts.
I'm looking forward
Like,
to
I
it, man.
almost wish we could start there.
Right. Well, and then
Yeah.
moving on, we're going to be talking about buying and insuring your first car, which I want to let everyone know that I know the secret to that. It is to buy the most expensive car you can that is flashy and is definitely something that, hang on. Sorry about that. Oh,
That's okay.
oh, I'm wrong. Sorry. That was the wrong advice. Damn, not all of us should be buying that, that old car
I was
or
like, where
that
is this
brand
guy
new,
going?
right?
Yeah.
But it's something that everyone does wrong, man.
Dude, so I hate buying cars. I hate buying cars. I hate the entire experience. And so like there's a lot to unpack. The people
Yeah,
like cars. Some people really like cars. So again, I don't think we want to be telling people you should be buying a Toyota Corolla
yeah,
when you really want to be driving a Porsche. Like I don't want to like get into that conversation. I'll let people make up their own minds as to what's important to them.
100%.
But when you step foot on the dealership, you have to realize that the main goal of the dealership is to rip you off. Okay?
Right?
And like they don't care what car, they don't care if it's a Corolla or a Porsche. All they care about is like making as much money as they possibly can from you.
100%.
And they're experts at ripping you off.
Yeah,
And so like it's pretty simple. You want to go and negotiate on the price of the car, not the monthly payment. And we'll get into all of that in that section. But a lot of dealerships will say, hey, tell me how much money you can afford to pay on a monthly basis. And you begin negotiating and you are not aware of the actual price. And if you're taking out a loan, the interest rate. And those are the two key factors that go into how much you're actually paying for the car. And the less you understand how much you're paying for the car, the more likely it is you're going to get ripped off.
right.
And so if you just understand what it is you're supposed to be negotiating when you step foot on the lot, you save yourself a lot of time. I'm not saying you're not going to get ripped off. They are pros at ripping people off. Like no disrespect, but you can at least feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
Stepping on the dealership.
Cars depreciation is a real thing. It's like the second you take that car off the lot, man, the value of that car just plummets, But I'm glad that you're going to help me unpack that because I wasn't always the best at buying cars. I got a couple good deals, but sometimes it was not a little bit more luck.
I don't want to give away like what I intend to talk about in those podcasts, but I will tell you, I went to a dealership after I wrote my book. And I wrote a whole chapter on how you negotiate. I went to the dealership, bought a car, came home, sat down at my desk, and I was like, son of a bitch. They totally ripped me off. I violated the number one principle that I said I wasn't going to do. They totally got me. And I'm not even in the spirit of bearing your soul on this show. I cried. I was like, how fucking much of a loser am I I was like so confident I was like doing everything right, and I got ripped off. Totally got
Yeah,
ripped off.
it is what it is. But
It
six,
is what it is.
yeah, right. Six is a big topic because it's all about work, paychecks, taxes, benefits, retirement. It's a big one. And I think that's probably going to take us quite a few episodes to kind of hammer away at all of that because there's a lot there.
Yeah, so I agree. So again, like I said, like the main tenets are stay out of credit card debt and learn how to invest. Okay. But that's not to say that there aren't other things that are really, really important. And so, like when you start, so when you graduate from college, or you just go straight into the workforce, there are a lot of things that happen associated with your paycheck that you just want to be aware of, right? So, if I'm making $20,000 a month, I'm not going to actually see $20,000 at the
Yeah.
end of the month. It's going to be something much different, right? Because there's all these deductions that are occurring in your paycheck. And the vast majority of people have no idea what those deductions are.
Yeah.
Some people are like, oh, you know what? Social Security, that's getting deducted. That must be my retirement plan, right? And so, like, one, it's not your retirement plan. And two, it is something that's being deducted, but you also are going to want to like have a 401k,
Yeah.
or you're going to want to sign up for insurance. And it's like a lot of people may not even understand what a 401k is. And so when we were
Yeah.
talking about there just being so much information overload in the world, what I really like about what you're doing right now is like let's not only like circle the wagons about what's important, but then let's like start from the very bottom
Right.
and build context. So like when you go like when one of your viewers moves on from our discussion and goes and watches the podcast that you spoke to somebody about buying real estate, it's like they have like that foundation from our conversation. And so I think, six is really kind of a foundational conversation about like what's happening in your paycheck and what is health insurance, what is retirement planning look like for somebody just getting started. And let's just like, there's no secrets in there. There's no like diamonds in the rough that are going to make you like super wealthy, but it is something that you're going to want to understand. And the more that you understand, the more you can then sort of pivot from there.
Definitely, man. And then some of these we're going to be figuring out as we go, but we kind of touch on so people can understand. We have real estate. We're going to be looking at insurance and ways to protect things. And, again, then moving into estate planning. And I didn't even know what that was, man. When I first heard a family member talking about their estate planning, I was like, damn, you got an estate? I was like, what is that actually? I thought it was like some, like some movie, like, well, hello, Charles. Welcome to the estate.
Is where the really rich people, yeah.
Yeah.
Estate plan sounds sexy, but it's actually just like, do you have a will? Or
Yeah.
how are you going to transfer your wealth to your kids the right way? What happens when you pass away? Like, is your partner going to be taken care of? Insurance is an awesome conversation, right? Because, I'm not going to advocate for anything illegal, but like if you're just getting started, like why the fuck do you need insurance for?
Yeah.
Right? So like, the chances of you dying of some crazy disease, obviously it's above zero. But when you're young, you can afford to you should get insurance, health insurance, but it there are ways to like get health insurance without like breaking the bank. And then auto insurance, like again, I'm not going to tell anybody to like not drive without auto insurance, but think about it. Like if you're single and you have no wealth and you have no assets, right? What are you really protecting yourself from? Right? If you get into an accident and you destroy your neighbor's Lexus, and they sue you and you have nothing to pay them back with, like, what's the risk? And again, I'm not advocating to be thoughtless and I'm not advocating to do anything illegal. What I'm saying is like your insurance and the way that you insure yourself needs to be commensurate with what you are protecting. Right.
Yeah.
So again, the offense is spending, getting control of your spending, not going into credit card debt, and investing. Those are the offensive plays that we make. Then there's like understanding things, which is the middle portion of what we just spoke about. But then these last things, income taxes, insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, auto insurance, all of that is defense,
Yeah.
right? We're
Yeah.
protecting our wealth.
I love that, man. Because it's like, and this is the toolkit. This is the toolkit that you start working with. And it's just like, I remember my grandpa had the most awesome toolkit. It was like his toolkit was in like, it wasn't a metal one. It was like in one of those wooden ones that you pick up, like the wooden tray. And he had so much cool stuff in there. And there was a tool that did everything. And it's like the cool thing is that whatever came up, he had this set of tools that was able to kind of handle the situation. And I think that with things that when we start trying to navigate things that we don't understand, if I needed to take a boat across the ocean, well, I would have no idea what I'm doing. But if I took some classes and I got some information, I'm sure that I could figure it out. And I'm sure that there's a series of probably like only like 12 to 15 things that are really, really important. There's other stuff that you need to know, but those 12
Yeah.
to 15 things are probably the things that could get most people across the sea,
Yeah.
And it's like, but you just have to figure those things out, have a mentor and figure out how to do it well,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm all about analogies, right? I'm all about analogies. And here's a fucking analogy that I love. There's really only three things that you have to do to become super wealthy, right? You just have to like get control of your spending, not get into credit card debt and invest your money. Like there's so much out there, but like
Yeah.
if you really just whittled it down, and again, like it's got to be in context, right? So like if you're 55 and you're swimming in credit card debt, and if you even still have student loan debt, maybe what I'm saying doesn't totally apply to you. But if you are young and you are just getting started, it is so and again, like I'm not saying that we're going to be living in Ibiza by the time we're 30, right? We have to be somewhat realistic, but like you have so much power available to you, and it is so easy to like wrap your head around what you're supposed to be doing. It's not overwhelming.
There's a clip going around the internet right now. You ever remember Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah.
Yeah, Uncle Rico. He's like, man, I can throw that. There's a clip right now
Yeah.
going around because the actor who played Uncle Rico is in the new White Lotus TV series.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he was there. There's this clip where Uncle Rico is sitting there talking about what he'd be like if he was a millionaire. He said, I'd be sitting there in my wealthy property and I would be, sitting there in a hot tub with my soulmate. And someone superimposes it with the White Lotus, where his character is sitting there at this resort looking at his partner who's in the jacuzzi. And one of the things that popped up because people were like, Uncle Rico finally made it. He's living at home. He's a deadbeat at 45, but he's after Napoleon, he made the right moves, man. And he got ahead.
That's so awesome.
Right?
That's so awesome.
And it's
Yeah.
like you sit there and you think about it because you're playing the long game. You're playing the long game. You're playing the chess game, and it might seem like I'm not there right now. And for any of the people that were listening to my last episode where I was down and I was our last episode, and I was just like, you know what? I feel done. I know that I'm going to make it. I know that this thing we're building is going to take off, whether it be this or Ilani's little world. I've got stuff. I'm planting the seeds and I know
Nice.
what's required is just time. We will take the time that we need, and then we get there.